Moore, host of More Money on WABC Radio, and James Fishback, CEO of Azoria. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Thanks. James, I just want to set this up. This may take a little while, but there are a lot of folks out there saying, well, so what? What she did is no big deal. As a matter of fact, in 2023, an estimable agency known as the Federal Reserve Board came out with a product and an informational memo, if it is a long one, and the abstract of it says the following: these fraudulent borrowers, such as Lisa Cook, perform substantially worse than similar declared investors, defaulting at a 75% higher rate. That is huge. Their defaults are also likelier to be strategic, suggesting that they pose a risk in the face of declining house prices. So these could really harm, what she is accused of doing could really harm the economy. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that 2008, 2009 financial crisis was caused by subprime loans, some of which were developed by these schemes of claiming your residence in two houses to get a better mortgage deal. Now, she has not been charged yet, it is true, but she hasn't produced any evidence that what is being claimed about her is untrue. So where does all this stand legally? I mean, without a charge, can the president still fire her?
Well, good afternoon, David. He absolutely can. Look, Lisa Cook was credibly accused and criminally referred by U.S. Housing Director Bill Pulte last week. Within 24 hours, she put out a statement scoffing it all off, calling it a tweet, and not actually denying the underlying allegation that in the span of 2 weeks, she got two mortgages on two properties, both claiming that they were somehow her primary mortgage. That's called owner occupancy fraud. It is a federal crime, Title 18 U.S. Code 1014. The DOJ prosecutes these cases all the time. She did not bother denying it. Now, here's the truth. Under Section 10 of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, the President of the United States, him alone, can remove a member of the Board of Governors, quote, for cause. In the Humphreys executive case before the Supreme Court in 1935, they defined for cause one of three ways: inefficiency, neglect of duty, and
All right. Appreciate everybody being here with me today. We just hit the start buttons. Looks like everything's working the way it should be working. So, welcome to the JRDukes Show, the home of the free-minded patriots. All right, looks like everybody's working. Appreciate everybody being here today. Of course, it's been a while since I've been on here, but I'm glad to be back. Appreciate y'all tuning in today. Of course, this is the home where the woke choke, the truth prevails, and the battles for your freedom are fought and won every day. We're going to be talking about Lisa Cook today. I'm sure y'all have seen her or heard about this situation that's going on in the news right now, and I got some interesting things to tell you about it. Maybe you don't know exactly how the Federal Reserve works, maybe you do, but the media narrative telling us that, hey, Donald Trump's taken over the Federal Reserve, Donald Trump is doing this, Donald Trump is doing that, is nothing but a lie. And today we're going to cut straight through the nonsense. It is amazing, ladies and gentlemen, how the legacy media, always this woke legacy media, will scream from the highest mountaintop about Donald Trump's paperwork. Remember, 34 felonies. Basically, he wrote checks to a porn star for whatever, and they went ahead and took these dead misdemeanors and turned them into 34 separate felonies because he allegedly, instead of categorizing it as a campaign expense, he categorized it as a personal expense. And trust me on this, had it went the other way, they still would have indicted him. It's really just that simple. But now we're supposed to believe, these same people want us to believe that when it comes to mortgage fraud, unreported income, and other criminal matters that we're going to talk about on today's program that's really not talked about in the news, I personally think Lisa Cook and some of these other individuals, such as Letitia James, Adam Schiff, I think they have a whole lot of legal jeopardy, and we're going to talk about it all right now. Trust me, this is not a nothing burger. Lisa Cook, she's currently, of course, it depends on who you ask, Donald Trump has fired her. She's a Federal Reserve governor and she's currently under technically what we call a criminal referral for mortgage misrepresentations, among other things. Remember Marilyn Mosby? We had, what was that, Catherine Pogue? And who was that governor? There was actually one mayor. Actually, it was Mosby that was the mayor. I think Pogue was actually the current state prosecutor at that time during Trump 1.0. These people were fierce critics of President Donald Trump. And you see how far that got them. And of course, now we have Letitia James. We have Adam Schiff. They both have their own ethical problems, and by my estimation, their own criminal problems. And it's not, I can't think of two more individuals that are more rightly deserving of the scrutiny that they stuck on President Trump and others. I mean, really, when you look at it, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? I think I've said it many times on my program that had this been any other time, any other president for that matter, and these type of terrible things happen to him, I would like to see him be the bigger man and say, hey, you know what happened, but I'm not going to follow Biden's example. I'm going to go ahead and do what's right for the country. Unfortunately, at this particular time, I think what is right for the country is for President Trump to do exactly what he's doing. He needs to do exactly what he's doing, and that is go after these crooked individuals that went after him. And the reason for that is he needs for the example to be set that if you do it one time, the whirlwind is going to get you. It's really that simple. These people, these nuts, these quacks only understand one thing, and that one thing is going to jail, paying a financial cost, having it happen to them, that which they did to others, especially Adam Schiff. And of course, we know what President Trump calls Adam Schiff. I won't repeat it on this program, but I'm sure it's obvious exactly what's going on. The pattern is clear. The swamp, ladies and gentlemen, protects their own while trying to destroy each and every one of us who dares to challenge the authority. You know, it wasn't that long ago that even on YouTube, I was really cautious about what I said and didn't say. I mean, remember, we're talking 7 months ago, free speech was on the line. I wasn't really sure what we'd be able to say or not say. And then, of course, stepped in Elon Musk along with President Donald Trump. And thank God all of this has happened. The double standard could not be more obvious. If you or I failed to pay for our mortgages, or we lied on our mortgages, or we hid rental income, if we did not declare this on our taxes, I assure you we would be facing prison time and other types of penalties for malfeasance. It's really just that simple. However, the elites, if you will, these woke individuals, they simply don't believe that the rules apply to them. So today, we're going to break it all down. We're going to get the truth behind these cases. We're going to look at some actual facts. I'm going to show you the actual paperwork, and I'm going to expose why this matters for each and every American who still believes in equal justice under the law. And listen, I'm not talking about equity. This is not no woke nonsense. I'm talking about justice. Yes, justice, and making sure our constitutional republic endures for years and years to come. So buckle up. Swamp Watch is now. So without further ado, let's go ahead and drill down into it. By the way, if you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to put them in the comment below. I will try to get to the comments as they come along. American Anna, I got to say hello to you real quick. It's always a pleasure having you in the house. Listen, American Anna is always so sweet, always checking up on me, see how things are going. I definitely appreciate you, appreciate my friend Mark and others who check in from time to time. Thank you all so much, and thank you for being here, and we will talk again here very soon. So let's go ahead. I got this graph that I want to pull up. Let's start off by talking about the Federal Reserve, right? There may be some things that you frankly are not familiar with, and I want to see if I can't help shed some light on this here. So let's just go ahead and let me share my window with you here and see if this will work the way I want. Here we go. Alrighty. All right, take a look at this right here. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so that everybody can see this. All right, I think that would do. Essentially, Lisa Cook serves on what's called the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. The board themselves, as you can see, has 7 members. Now, this is the structure of the board, and it's important to understand this because this first story we're going to look at is an article by ABC News, and we know what a bastion of truth ABC News is not. They basically are claiming, hey, Donald Trump's trying to take over the Federal Reserve. They're supposed to be independent. And by the way, as a side note, I don't know how I feel completely about anything being independent. When we vote for someone or for a particular party or for a particular president, that president should have authority over their departments. It's just that simple. And clearly the Federal Reserve System, the Federal Reserve and governors, their employees, they are all, every one of them are employees of the executive branch, aka the President of the United States. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that. For me, I'm not really comfortable with this independence, and I don't necessarily buy all the, let's just say all the noise you hear saying it's the end of the world if the president has any type of influence over the Federal Reserve. But we'll get into that maybe another day. Structure of the board, 7 members when it's fully staffed. Now, right now, as we're going to talk about, there's 1 member that is vacant, and it was individual vacant under the Biden administration. Each is appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. We're pretty familiar with that process. We're going to go through this quick. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and I promise I'll do my best to answer each and every one of them. Each particular board member serves a 14-year staggered terms, and 1 seat expires every 2 years. Kind of makes sense. So it's a 14-year cycle with these 7 governors, right? From the 7 governors, the president of the United States designate 1 as the chair and 1 as the co-chair. Pretty straightforward, right? The chair of the Federal Reserve, who of course is currently this Jerome Powell. And by the way, you hear on the news all the time that, oh, this was an appointee of President Trump. That's not true. That's false. Jerome Powell was put on the board by Barack Obama. The reason why his name gets tied up with Donald Trump appointing him is it's basically the liberal media, in my estimation, once again trying to spin the facts and play loose with the facts. What it is Donald Trump did elevate him to actually be the chairman of the Federal Reserve, but he was already serving, and generally this is in keeping with their normal traditions at the Federal Reserve Board. The chairman sets the agenda, represents the Fed publicly, and of course he has a huge influence on the policy, but he's not a dictator as you hear associated with Donald Trump all the time. The actual Fed chairman is basically just, I mean, don't get me wrong, he has authority, but he sets the agenda, he sets the tone, and if there ever is a tie, which I don't know of any type of circumstance where there has been a tie in the voting structure, the weight is generally given to the chairman. So in a tie situation, his vote would carry the day, so to speak. The chairman of the board, this Powell guy, he serves a 4-year term as a chair, and then generally may or may not be reappointed by the then president. Okay, so I want to be really clear about that. Now, in addition to the 7 individuals that comprises federal board, it's important to understand there's another 5 people that have what we call voting authority in the board. All right, I don't want to make it too confusing, so let me just get this out of the way. If anybody is to be removed off the boards, it has to be done. It says, yes, the presidents appoint the Fed governors and the chair, but removing them has always been controversial. We know that, but they can be removed for cause. And we're going to definitely talk about that today, exactly what for cause means. Interestingly enough, we have a very conservative Supreme Court, thank God. And of course, we can also thank President Trump for this. And this, let's just say, more conservative Supreme Court is definitely steering things back in a different direction in relation to the federal board and other boards that they've talked about, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. There's been just a string of rulings that have, in my opinion, been ruled correctly. And we're talking about, as you can see on your screen, this one by this particular law firm, a case called Wilcox, and a case that's currently going on named Boyle. All right. Here's the short version. The Federal Reserve Board has 7 governors with 14-year terms. The chair is appointed every 4 years. However, and here's a list of the appointees if you're interested. Notice most of these are Democrat appointees. That's important to remember. I took time and actually listed out each and every member. Now, this last seat right here was appointed by Biden, but this individual resigned and is currently empty. So there are technically just 6 seats as of this now. Okay. And I listed here Obama has appointed 1, Donald Trump so far has appointed 2, and Biden has appointed 3. So you basically got a 4-2 split as of right now. That is including Lisa Cook. I just want to make sure I'm very clear about that. The other part of the board, when they vote, if you will, is called the FOMC. This is an acronym that stands for the Federal Open Market Committee. The board, the governors, are part of this board, the FOMC. The way it works is you have the 7 governors that we just discussed at length. One position, of course, right now is vacant. You have different regional federal banks. You ever notice on your money how we'll say like a D for Denver, or it has a S? I believe the S is San Francisco. There's different Federal Reserve banks that control and print our money. Well, each of these regional offices has a president. Okay, that kind of makes sense, right? Well, there are, first of all, I want to say the New York president, the president of the New York Fed, always is part of the FOMC. That's just the way they set it up, ladies and gentlemen. Long time ago, he's kind of like a lifetime voting member, period. The other seats are basically altered. 4 of the other 11, okay, because there's technically 12, but because the guy from New York always votes, they alternate the other 4, the regional federal bank presidents. They rotate yearly. So it's kind of like almost a lottery as to who is designated to vote at that particular time. So even with the vacancy in Washington, the FOMC still has full quorum and operates normally. We talked about if it's a tie, the chairman will cast the deciding vote. Whatever he votes is the way the way that it goes. So when you hear this nonsense that Donald Trump is trying to take over the Fed, that's just complete nonsense. As you're going to see here in a minute, even if he replaces Lisa Cook, it's only going to change the votes by 1, and there will still be a majority, at least of the original 7 individuals on the federal board that the 7 that vote. You'll still have basically a 4-2-3 split, and that's assuming that they fill that 1 vacant seat right here. The FOMC, which actually decides the rates, has 12 votes, 6 governors, the New York federal president, and 4 regional presidents. So I hope I'm not confusing on the math. I want to be really clear. So you got 6 governors. You add the New York federal president. He is always on that board, he or she. I don't know if it's a he or she. And then you have the 4 other rotating positions. Bottom line, there's 12 individuals. If all of the seats are full, that vote. If there was a vote right now, there would be 11 individuals that would actually make the vote one way or the other. Okay? So I went ahead and I did a hypothetical vote just to see what it would look like and to see if it would make any difference if President Trump actually replaced Lisa Cook as of right now. And the answer is no. We just went over that. All right. Lisa Cook was confirmed by the Senate and sworn in May 23, 2003. Now, what happened is that her term actually expired. I believe she was filling in for somebody, and she was reappointed by Biden, and now her seat is not over with the January 31st, 2038. So if she's not ousted, she's going to be in there a long time. And then, it's just kind of insane. Can you imagine a position that you could feel, in other words, you're a sitting governor, you're filling that position, and yet you are under investigation for malfeasance, crimes involving the very thing that you're regulating. I mean, that's just a definition of nuts and crazy, but that is exactly what they're trying to do. And I'm confident that the Supreme Court is going to rule in favor of the Trump administration. Now, I'm not sure about the judge tomorrow, exactly what this judge is going to do, but we're going to find out soon. It's not going to really matter what this judge at this particular level does, because it's going to go upstairs, if you will, and eventually it will end up in the Supreme Court Again, with a 6-3 conservative majority, I think it's fairly certain, fairly obvious that Donald Trump is in a good position to win, period. Now, let me make sure I blow this up just a tad on this particular screen. All right, the media narrative versus the actual reality. We're going to take a look at this article, and basically they're going to tell us Trump is taking over the Fed. Remember, the regional federal presidents, these people are not presidential appointees. These are people that are presidents of the Federal Reserve banks, the individual jurisdictions is probably the best way to say it. They make up 5 of the 12 voting seats. And remember, it's on a revolving type of situation. Again, I broke it down 3-2. If Lisa was kicked off, it'd go from 3-2, and Trump would go from 2-3. But you also have the Obama nominees right there. So it just ain't going to matter is what's going to happen at the end of the day. Let's talk briefly about for cause. Lisa Cook and her filings are saying, hey, guess what? The president cannot fire me because he's not firing me for cause. He can say he is, but he is not. She's basically telling the court, look, I have only had allegations made against me. Nobody has filed any charges against me. Nobody has put me on trial. I have not even been indicted. I haven't been arrested. I haven't had nothing. That's essentially her take in a nutshell. Well, guess what? For cause, when a statute says an officer can be removed, quote unquote, for cause, which generally is misconduct, neglect of duty, malfeasance, it does not mean there must be a criminal conviction. It's really just that simple. And I have studied this extensively in recent days just to make sure I'm absolutely right about this. The Supreme Court has already ruled on this, that when the statute just says a president can fire someone for cause, if there are no specific definitions of for cause, the president can decide what that for cause is. And the Supreme Court has already ruled in recent cases that we just went over that, hey, guess what? You cannot say, hey, we're going to go ahead and review the president's decision for cause. They just simply won't do it. They give the deference to the president, I think, is the best way to explain it. So I hope that's making sense the way that I'm explaining it. I mean, this should be easy. This should be nothing. But once again, you have the legacy media trying to tell you how terrible this is, what President Trump is doing. If it was any of us that were working a job and we had some kind of conflict of interest, that's a reason to get fired for cause. If we stole money, that's a reason to lose your job. This woman is currently, right now, she's in charge of regulating Fannie Mae. These are quasi-government agencies is probably the best way to think about it. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, all these agencies, she's in charge of regulating, yet she's accused, and it's pretty obvious from the paperwork, she's accused of committing fraud against the United States via these agencies. And in short, she's accused of fraud by telling the banks under oath, under penalty of perjury, that, hey, this information's true. I'm going to move in to this resident within so many days. I promise that that's what's going to happen. And I understand the reason I'm getting this loan at this low interest rate is because I'm claiming that I'm going to use this as my quote unquote personal residence. All right. Now, we have talked again on this program many times the difference between a residence and what the government has generally been calling a principal residence, a primary residence. In the state of Florida here, we call it a domicile. Here's the key distinction. You can only have one primary residence, aka principal residence, aka domicile. You can only have one in the entire world. It's just the way the definitions work. What do you consider home base? Now, you can have as many residents as you want. Wealthy people do that all the time. People that have jobs in another state or another country, they generally will have another residence that they can call their temporary home. But it is not their domicile. It's not their primary residence. And that is a key distinction. And this woman, Lisa Cook, she's not someone just off the street that just signed some fine print blindly. This woman is a sophisticated, highly educated woman. She's a real estate investor. She knows better. She knows what she did. Make no mistake about it. This is very clear that she's committed fraud. And I'll tell you, based on the paperwork, we're going to take a look at together right now. She committed fraud. She should not be worried about necessarily keeping her job. She should be worried about not going to jail, not paying huge financial penalties. We're going to talk about that too. Exactly what could she face if these charges indeed are proven true. Let's see. I made a quick note about it. I want to just kind of give you a idea. Hypothetical legal consequences right here. Mortgage fraud, false statements to a bank. It's USC Code 18, subsection 1014. False statements on loan or mortgage application. 30 years in prison, ladies and gentlemen. 30 years in prison per count and a $1 million fine. And don't think that can't happen. I've heard people say, oh, that's not likely to happen. She's, it's first time offender, whatever. It's not like that's not true. I saw a guy right here in Florida, him and his wife, over in Hudson, I believe it was, on the other side of the county over here. They sold a house to I think it was a single mother. She had 1 or 2 kids, and the house had a sinkhole. Sinkholes are a terrible problem here in Florida. They lied on the application stating that there was no damage to the property, but there was. They had a major sinkhole. The insurance company paid out on the sinkhole, and the people that sold the house, the sellers we'll call them, they went ahead and just did some cursory repairs. Let's call it cursory repairs just to kind of hide the sinkhole. Well, they sold it to this single mother, and of course, the sinkhole reopened. This woman was out her deposit, out her money. Fraud had been committed against her. Well, guess what? The feds raided their property, arrested the husband and the wife. This is not a young couple. This was an older couple. They are both currently serving 20 years each in the federal pen. I kid you not, 20 years each. First-time offenders, but I have to tell you, they absolutely refuse to cooperate with the feds, especially the wife. She refused to testify against her husband, which I get. That would be difficult. But again, I don't want to get off in the weeds on that. I'm just telling you that happened here in Florida. And I think that was in the last year or two, if memory serves me correct. And so, yes, she could face serious penalties as a result of her crimes if it's proven in a court of law. Also, this is really what I wanted to mention to you. No one's reporting this, but we're going to take a look at it together. And William, I think his last name, Pulte, his actual referral to the DOJ, Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, he made that referral, and inside that referral, he's kind of just hinting about other crimes. He just says it in passing, like, we have no record of income being reported for this property or rental income being reported. And she also allegedly failed to file different financial disclaimers, financial things that she's supposed to file. When you're in certain positions, you have to tell the government certain financial disclosures. You have to tell them what money you've made, where it came from, this type of thing. And she failed, according to the government here, to do any of this. And each and every one of these potentially could add to a lengthy jail sentence. Failure to report rental income, 5 years in prison under USC 267-201 and 7206. And there's also a crime, false federal disclosure forms. We're talking about 18 USC 1001, 5 years in prison per conviction. And then you could also get into pattern of conspiracy charges, another 5 year in prison. And of course, if the government really wanted to hammer her, there's other things they can hit her with. We're all familiar with that RICO nonsense, right? What they try to tear President Trump up with. As a matter of fact, what they did in the case of Fani Willis and our favorite Nathan Wade over there in Fulton County, Georgia, right? But that is another story that they don't like to talk about too much, but it is the reality. These people commit crimes and they think they have some kind of God-given constitutional right to keep their job, and that is ridiculous. Insanity, insane. We just can't tolerate this. It's really just that simple. Let's go and take a look at what our friend William Pulte had to say. I hope I'm saying his last name right. All right. 3 strikes and you're out. This was a recent post he made on X. Today, U.S. Federal Housing sent a second criminal referral in the matter of Lisa D. Cook related to a mortgage on a third property and alleged misrepresentations about her properties to the United States government during her time as governor of the Federal Reserve. On April 7, 2021, Cook entered a 15-year mortgage for a condominium in Cambridge, Massachusetts, representing it as her second home. Only 8 months later, on December 1st, 2021, Cook signed an ethics form with the U.S. government that this property was an investment rental property. In subsequent filings in 2022 and 2025, Cook consistently listed this property as a investment rental property, not a second home. Representing the property as a second home may have allowed Cook to secure a lower, quote unquote, quote in here, second home, end quote, mortgage down payment and rates, as investment properties typically carry higher down payments and higher rates due to increased risk, right? We all know that. That's pretty straightforward. If it's a investment property, if it's essentially a business venture, you're not going to get as cheap of a rate as you would on a residential property. The government wants to incentivize personal individual home ownership. They will not give these special rates, these special loans to people that are simply looking to buy a vacation home or a second home. I mean, it's pretty well known. Everybody knows this. Additionally, Cook allegedly misrepresented her Atlanta, Georgia property from 2022 to 2025 to the U.S. government as her residence, despite evidence suggesting it would be rented out to tenants. Similarly, Cook declared in a 2025 government filing that her Ann Arbor, Michigan property, so she got another property in Ann Arbor, Michigan, I believe 2 properties in Atlanta, Georgia, or the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, and then this other property that they're talking about in this particular posting on X. A lot of properties, right? Okay, and they're all supposed to be her personal property. I think not. All right, similarly, Cook declared in 2025 government filing that her Ann Arbor, Michigan property was her personal residence. Really? However, we have reason to believe that as of 2025, the Ann Arbor property is being used as a rental property, not a personal residence. These inconsistencies appear Cook made additional multiple false representations, including to the U.S. government regarding the status of her mortgages and properties. How about that, huh? Let's take a look and see what old Bill had to say about Lisa. Here, let me see if I can blow this up just a digit so that we can take a look at it. Nah, it won't let me. But I'll just give you the highlights of it. He's actually listing the relevant portions here. And remember, this is from the FHFA, which is the Federal Housing, the agency that is overseen by this Polte. He's sending this letter to DOJ, the Honorable Pamela J. Bondi. We know her as the Attorney General. Second criminal referral. Dear Attorney General Bondi and Special Attorney Martin, as Director of the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency, I reiterate the referral of August 15th, 2025. Keep in mind, this is the second referral, not a first referral, a second referral. And I don't care who you are, you don't want to see your name on a piece of paper from the U.S. government as a referral to the Department of Justice. That is just not a good thing. It's just not good. Nobody wants this. Anyway, he goes on. He's providing new information concerning a third property for Lisa D. Cook and what appears to be multiple false representations to United States governments by Cook while she was a governor of the Federal Reserve. Third property in Cambridge, Massachusetts. On April 7, 2021, in just 4 months before Cook took out two separate loans where she falsely declared 2 separate properties as her primary residence, aka domicile, as we just talked about. So make sure you understand that. 4 months before she took out 2 additional loans, saying that was also personal property that she was going to make as her personal residence, Cook entered into a 15-year mortgage agreement on a condominium located, blah, 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 for $361,000, which she represented the property as her second home. According to the mortgage agreement with the Bank Staff Fund Federal Credit Union, Cook affirmed to, quote, occupy and use the property as Barrel's second home, end quote. See Exhibit F. However, 8 months later, after representing to the bank that it would be her second home, Cook represented to the U.S. government December 1st, 2021, that she earned $15,000 to $50,000 in rental income and declared it as investment rental property, not a second home. And they have the exhibit there. So at times she's reporting rental income on property that is supposed to be a single private residence, a primary residence for her. Look, at the end of the day, they have all these documents with clearly conflicting information. Some properties she allegedly did not pay taxes on as far as federal income tax or disclose that she made money off the property. She's got serious problems here. Then again, multiple filings with the U.S. government, 22, 23, 24, 25. Cook represented the property was an investment rental property, not a second home. And he's got the exhibits to prove it. Second homes receive lower mortgage costs than investment properties because investment properties are inherently riskier. This is an extreme troubling because in addition to other reasons, by potentially falsely representing the property as a second home, Cook may have received savings by not declaring it as an investment property. Boom, more problems. And it just goes on and on. See this particular exhibit, see that exhibit. And I got to mention, he puts it boldly right here in the middle here. This is in bold text. While serving as governor of the Federal Reserve, Cook appears to have falsely represented her Atlanta properties status to the United States government. Who would have thought, huh? Ms. Cook, in her filings, the United States government has consistently disclosed this mortgage as a personal residence. See Exhibit BCDE. In 2025, Cook represented that the Ann Arbor property was still her personal residence, but U.S. federal housing has reason to believe that the property is currently being used as rental property. So here's another thing too. Generally, like in the state of Florida, when something is your primary residence, aka your principal residence, aka your domicile, in addition to potentially favored loan rates you may receive from the federal government, you also, under Florida state law, you receive different asset protection as a result of that. In other words, one thing I love about Florida is once you own your home and your home is your actual domicile, as long as you pay your mortgage, and if your mortgage is paid off, you don't have to worry about it. Just pay your property taxes and it's yours for life, no matter what. Asset protection is a subject I love to talk about. It's one of the great things about Florida. Florida is the friendliest debtor jurisdiction in the entire world, period. Yes, you heard me right. If you have a problem financially, you got creditors coming after you, you need to consider moving to Florida. It's really just that simple. What do you think O.J. Simpson attempted? Actually, he did move here, I believe, back in 2005. Now, they slightly changed the rules under Bush at that time, George W. Bush, some of the bankruptcy laws in relation to that. Again, that's a whole other subject. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that, but it is still the friendliest creditor jurisdiction in the world. As far as Ms. Cook goes, that's the least of her concerns. The analysis, financial disclosures to the U.S. government required for all Senate confirmed appointees and various senior government officials are vital when assessing the fitness and character of individuals tasked with being public officials and the stewards of the American taxpayer. While the previous referred to misconduct by Ms. Cook necessitates review to determine whether various criminal statutes have been violated, U.S. federal housing believes that even further scrutiny is required given the conflicting nature of Mrs. Cook's financial disclosures, and to determine whether Mrs. Cook has potentially made further potential criminal violations as well as material misrepresentations to the United States Senate, the United States government, in order to, among other things, acquire and retain her as a governor, a board governor. The Department of Justice, DOJ, should review to determine whether a violation of criminal status has occurred. I'm not going to go through all the statutes, but you get the idea. The hints here are they are still investigating. There may be additional properties that are also going to be coming forward very soon. This lady has serious problems. I don't think there's really a nicer way to put that. Here's the actual letter. I guess if you want to read that, I'll put a link when I'm done on there. But they actually list out the actual properties right here. This is this was the first. Let me make sure. Yeah, this was the first referral that he made, dated August 15th, 2025. I'm not going to read this whole thing again, but it's pretty well going over the same issues. They list the Ann Arbor, Michigan property here as far as the background is considered. And then they also have a unit. Obviously, it's a townhome or something to that effect in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm not going to put the address out there, but she's got some serious problem. And again, they go into it that she probably typically received a 0.25 to 0.5 better interest rate on these loans for this. I mean, he really breaks it down. And of course, it's signed off by this same director of U.S. Federal Housing. Very, very unfortunate for this lady here. So let me check and see if anybody's got any questions on that particular thing, and then we'll go into it. Hey, Monique, it's good to have you here. Thank you for attending. It's good to see you. American Anna, she's now stating it was a simple accident. Yeah, she can say whatever she wants to say. She is in serious problems. 5 properties, and so far 4 cases for it. Look like she's going to do a lengthy benefit. Yeah, I think it's definitely on the rising. And the fact she refuses to resign is only going to motivate the Trump administration to really push harder, if you know what I mean, aka keep investigating. If I was in this situation, I would do what that one state's attorney individual did in Pittsburgh that we were talking about at the beginning of this program. I think that was Marilyn Mosby. It was either her or Pogue, whichever one. One was mayor, one was state's attorney. And what did she do? The first thing she did was immediately go into the state's attorney's office and make a deal. Had her attorney show up the next day. What can we do to make this problem, to resolve this problem, to put it bluntly? And that's exactly what she did. And she ended up without doing any prison time. Now, admittedly, she definitely had some serious sanctions and penalties. I believe they both lost their law license. I'm pretty certain she did. I can't imagine she was able to keep her law license as a result of that. But at any rate, she was able to work out a deal that I would consider to be a sweetheart deal. The other individual, the mayor, she went on and fought it tooth and nail and was convicted, and she actually served a certain amount of time in prison. So it is what it is. So bad choices, and they continue to keep making bad choices. Now, this particular screen, this article that I found on ABC News, we know how accurate ABC News is, right? Yes, that's a joke. Yes, that is a joke. We know how ABC News is. They are so one-sided. Surely y'all have to be like me, and sometimes you turn over to ABC News or CNN or one of these communist type of news places, and you hear something reported, and it is such a different spin, or it's just a wrong spin. They just spin it where, in my opinion, it's a lie. And it's clear they're trying to push forward some type of agenda, which is unfortunate. The news should be the news. I guess that's one of the things great about America. You can have everything you want your way. I mean, nowadays our news is like Burger King. You can have it your way, right? Whatever you want, you can have. If you have one political sway, turn to CNN. If you're really a communist, turn to MSNBC. I guess it's called MS now. And of course, if you're more normal, I guess you would be listening to Newsmax or Fox News, right? It is the way it is. But this story caught my eye, and we just have to talk about it briefly here. Why is the stock market shrugging off Trump's attempted firing of the federal governor, Lisa Cook? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They would title it like that? Why? You know, it's like these people are hoping that we fail, are hoping that the economy collapses, that things stop, that it all comes crashing down, if you will, because they want to be able to say Trump was bad, Trump was wrong, and all they can do is hope that things come crumbling down. Have you noticed that? That's kind of the takeaway that I take off this, right? Just ridiculous on how they do that. All right, here we go. Let's just take a quick peek at it, and I got a couple comments to make on this here. The S&P 500 closed at a record high on Thursday, just days after President Donald Trump moved to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, the first such removal in the 112-year history of the central bank. The attempted ouster came after Trump railed for months against the Fed and its chair, Jerome Powell, for declining to heed his call for lower interest rates. You know what? President Trump has free speech just like anybody has. If he wants to scream that interest rates should be lowered, they should be lowered. And like I said at the beginning of this program, I don't know how much I like the fact that we have anything independent of the branch that governs them. Why should this board be independent? I realize they think the economy is more stable that way, but I don't know. And does anybody really believe that anything is truly independent? I mean, our founding fathers had the wisdom to put checks and balances on everything, right? So, again, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not exactly sure of how I feel about it. I'd have to think about it some more. But just generally, if we vote someone into office, the will of the people should be number one. It's just that simple. At least it is in my mind, all right? The attempted ouster came after Trump railed for months against the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, for declining his heed to lower interest rates. For his part, Trump says he removed Cook over mortgage fraud allegations against Cook. Cook sued Trump on Thursday over the attempted filing. The clash between Trump and the Feds has stoked concern among many economists about the independence of the central bank, long viewed as a cornerstone of the U.S. economy. The stock market, however, has shrugged. You think? I wonder why the stock market would be shrugging, ladies and gentlemen, at this point. I can tell you why, because Donald Trump has us on the right path. Sanity is back in the White House. Common sense is ruling the day. Instead of building windmills, we're enabling clean burning coal, drilling for oil and gas again. I mean, it just goes on. And to all that, all I can say is it's about time and amen, right? The major stock indices have climbed on 3 consecutive days since Trump attempted to fire Cook. Now, he didn't attempt to fire her. He did fire her. Since then, S&P has jumped 0.9, while the tech-heavy NASDAQ has trickled up 1.1%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has increased 0.8. And, of course, it's even higher now. I believe this article is from last Thursday. The resilience of the stock market owes to overlapping factors. You can bet Donald Trump's not going to get credit for the stock market, right? He gets all the blame when it goes down. He gets no credit when it goes up, as you're going to hear right here. These include doubts about whether the courts will ultimately grant Cook's removal, hope for lower interest rates if Cook were to be ousted, and the sheer momentum of the months-long market surge. Again, it has nothing to do with Trump, right? Right now, the message markets are sending is, well, we really don't care, said Steven Sosnick, chief strategist at trading firm Interactive Brokers, told ABC News any concerns aren't enough to upset the market's mojo. Federal law allows the president to remove a member of the Fed board for cause. Remember, there's a very clear Supreme Court case, and there's been several in recent years that says if it's not specifically identified what for cause is, then we will defer to the chief executive, aka the president, to determine what for cause is. And by the way, there is a case from 1901. I believe the case is Reagan versus United States of America. And no, it's not Ronald Reagan. It's a different Reagan. And in that case, to cut through all the noise, it said definitively that the courts will not review for cause, period. It's really just that simple. In a letter posted on social media earlier this week, the president moved to fire Cook over allegations led by Trump's administration, who claimed she had committed mortgage fraud. Trump pointed to the criminal referral from the Federal Housing Finance Agency, Director William Pulte. And of course, we just read most of that together. Cook has not been charged for the alleged misconduct and has not directly addressed the substance of the allegations against her. Yeah, isn't that interesting? she has yet to come out, which, by the way, I would never encourage her to do, but it still is a fact. She's never came out and said, these allegations are false. I didn't do this. Or to give a detailed explanation of what's going on, right? Just kind of interesting how this. Cook has not been charged for the alleged misconduct, has not directly addressed the substance of the allegations against her. In a statement last week, Cook said she would seek out her financial documents to answer, quote, any legitimate questions and provide the facts. Well, to my knowledge, she has not done that as of yet, so we'll see. Her lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia describes Trump's effort as illegal and unprecedented, saying Trump's actions violate Cook's constitutional rights to due process, as well as her right to notice and a hearing under the Federal Reserve Act. Well, guess what? The Federal Reserve Act does not apply in this case. You know, nowadays, these folks think somehow they have a constitutional right to a job. They think their positions are just guaranteed by the Constitution because they work for the federal government. Ladies and gentlemen, newsflash, it does not. In a statement to ABC News, the White House rebuked Cook's statement saying Trump move to fire her is permitted under federal law. The removal of a governor for cause improves the Federal Reserve Board's accountability and credibility for both the markets and the American people. Can you imagine if they let her stay on this board after clearly committing fraud, some type of malfeasance? I mean, if she does it and there's no consequence, what stops everybody else from committing this type of fraud? I mean, it's just ridiculous. You know, we just went through a bad economic period back in 2008 where you had all these housing markets collapse. I mean, period, collapse. And in part, it's because of fraud or this repackaging these home loans into these stupid REITs and all these other garbage financial instruments that they have. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that gets us in trouble, folks. We can't allow that. That's just complete nonsense. Hours after Cook filed the lawsuit, a judge granted a hearing for Friday morning. The case has been assigned to blah, blah, blah. Now, we already know that it says here the outcome remains unclear, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's their take on it. The bottom line is tomorrow, today, of course, being a holiday, and by the way, happy Labor Day. I get Labor Day Memorial confused all the time, but happy Labor Day to everybody out there. Tomorrow, they're supposed to submit briefs. I believe both sides are supposed to provide the court additional information to support their position, whatever their position may be, one way or the other. I did want to point out just a couple quick things right here. This is President Donald Trump's opposition to the plaintiff's motion for a restraining order, basically for her lawsuit to keep her on the board. And I want to cut through some of the nonsense here. He does go into it. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm just going to kind of hit a couple highlights right here. And he just points out how silly this whole situation is. Obviously, she doesn't qualify for a temporary restraining order because a temporary restraining order, as the president rightly points out, is an extraordinary remedy that should be granted only when the party seeking relief, by clearly showing what they call a burden of persuasion. And he cites the case right here. Generally, it's been my experience to get a TRO, temporary restraining order. You got to show that, look, Judge, if you don't grant this TRO right now, there's going to be some type of harm committed that simply cannot be undone. Money cannot make this right. Something that pops into my mind, for example, would be, let's say your neighbor's about to cut down a 200-year-old oak tree of some sort, and there's a dispute as to whose property it's on. Well, that might be something for a TRO, for a judge to say, hey, hang off cutting that down. I'm going to grant it. And let me think about this, because once the tree is cut down, the tree is cut down. In this particular case right here, it just doesn't measure up to generally what the standard is for a TRO. I'm just putting that out there. Obviously, when somebody wants relief or whatever the case is, they're going to always say that it constitutes a TRO. We need to have it right now. Otherwise, the entire world is going to fall apart. One last thing on this document. Take a look at this right here. I think this, as pointed out by the president, his attorneys, pretty well seals the deal. Let me blow it up just a little bit. Over a century ago, the Supreme Court held that when a statute permits, quote, removal for cause, that it's, quote, is a matter of discretion and not reviewable, at least if the causes are not defined by statute. And that, of course, is Reagan versus the United States back from 1901. That's the case I was referring to earlier. It's really just that simple, my friend. You cannot have this type of situation where everybody that's fired by the President of the United States gets a review in the federal courts. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. It's unhealthy for our country. It undermines the institution of the executive branch. And I'm very confident that our great Supreme Court ultimately will come down on the right side on this. Again, we're just going to have to wait and see and find out one way or the other. I'm curious if you agree, disagree with anything that I've commented on. Put it in the comments below or put it in the comments on this particular chat. Let me check, see if you got any questions I can answer right at this particular moment. Monique and American Nan, I appreciate all y'all's spot on comments. Yeah, she's proved Jerome is working. Yeah, I have no doubt that Jerome Powell, is working against Trump. Again, you had the news coming out all the time. Oh, Trump put him on there. Trump appointed him. That's false. Absolutely false. He was put on the court by Barack Obama, period. Now, Trump did elevate him to the position of chairman, but he was put on the court by Barack Obama. Yeah, I get confused on that all the time. Which one's Labor Day? Which one's Memorial Day? So let's say I went to vote with my 19-year-old daughter in November. We voted for the candidate who's out on bail. Okay, well, I imagine that's meant in jest. Okay, well, thank you. Another wonderful secret. We appreciate you like everyone else. So everyone's got their own opinion, right, folks? So that's the way it goes. All right, well, you have it, folks. I'm going to leave it right there for the rest of the day. Unfortunately, you've seen this pattern. I mean, we've seen this for some time. Everybody from this Mosby, convicted of fraud and convicted of perjury, to this Catherine Pogue, the former mayor sent to prison for corruption and tax crimes. Lisa Cook now is she's next, right? She's now at a minimum, she's under investigation. And it's not just one criminal referral. We have 2 criminal referrals over mortgage and disclosure problems. Clearly, there is some type of problem. But guess what? The liberal news media wants to tell each and every one of us, hey, there's no problem here. Nothing to see here. It's got to be Donald Trump's fault. Move on. Next. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump got slammed with 34 felonies over allegedly not properly categorizing checks. Absolutely ridiculous. But that is the world we live in. That is the swamp in action. One set of rules for them, another set of rules for anyone who dares, who has the tenacity to say, hey, enough, we are not going to do this. At the end of the day, this is not just paperwork mistakes. These are serious allegations that would put you or me in handcuffs. But when it comes to these elites, when it comes to the media, these people cover for these people. They distract us. They continue to make excuses. And of course, that's why I'm calling this program now Swamp Watch, to keep our eyes on the truth, expose the double standards, and remind each and every American that equal justice is supposed to mean just that: equal justice, equal under the law. I definitely want to thank each and every one of you for spending time with me. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep our community growing. And you'll know when I come out with my next video, my next live. I'm going to try to see if I can make this 3 o'clock appointment thing work out 2 or 3 times a week. We'll see how it goes. I definitely want to keep a shining light on this corruption. I want to make sure I keep shining a light on this legacy media. We cannot allow these people to get away with it by constantly turning a blind eye. And listen, I appreciate each and every one of you joining me today. Make sure y'all know that. American Nanda, thank you. Monique, thank you. Thank you all so much. Y'all are truly, truly a blessing, and I appreciate y'all joining me today. No doubt about that. I always like to say, keep that mind free, never give up. And until next time, my friends, I am JR Dukes.